Hello, good morning, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is part 5 of the AWS Lambda video series. Okay, so in this video, we are going to discuss the comparison point between AWS Lambda and EC2 instance. So let us first understand AWS Lambda is a serverless service, and where EC2 is both comes under the compute services. AWS Lambda is serverless, and EC2 is completely server based. Okay, so EC2 is another compute service from AWS Lambda, which helps us to create virtual machines on AWS infrastructure, where we can install all our required software as per our applications, and we can run any enterprise application there within virtual machines. Okay, so AWS Lambda is serverless and EC2 is server based. The first point. AWS Lambda is a platform as a service, where EC2 is infrastructure as a service. It means AWS Lambda provides us a platform where we can write our code and deploy on AWS Lambda, and we don't have to configure any server or any infrastructure. We don't have to worry about any underlying environment, okay, where the our code or application is running. Okay, so that is called platform as a service. Wherein EC2, we have EC2 provides as an infrastructure. It provides you a machine, a virtual machine, where you can opt like what will be the CPU, how many CPU cores you required, what will be the memory, what will be the storage. Okay, and all those machine configuration you can choose, and you can configure your machine. Okay, so it is a kind of infrastructure. You are provisioning infrastructure. Okay, where AWS Lambda is a platform. Okay, we are not nowhere concerned about the underlying infrastructure in the AWS Lambda. So this is the first point. Second, AWS Lambda supports limited languages we can write our code or utility in .NET, C#, Python, Node.js, Golang, Ruby. So there are some limited languages wherein we can write our code or utility in AWS Lambda. But in EC2 instance, as it is a complete virtual machine, we have the freedom, we have the flexibility to set up our own environment. We have the flexibility to install all kind of required software as per application. Language runtime is doesn't have any constraint here. So it's all up to us, what application, what software we need to install to run our application or utility. It's all freedom we have with EC2, because it's a complete virtual machine. We have the access, we can log into the machine, we can view all the system configurations, and whatever application or projects we have to run there, we can configure the system accordingly. Okay, so that is the flexibility or the freedom with the EC2 instance or the virtual machine. But AWS Lambda doesn't have these limitations. There are certain defined languages wherein we can write the code or write the utility, and in that within that only it will AWS Lambda will support. That's the second comparison point. What is the responsibility with AWS Lambda? Write your code and push your code to AWS Lambda. We have to write the code only. What is our responsibility? We have to write the utility or the code or a script, and we have to build and deploy to AWS Lambda. That's it, and it will keep on running on its own platform. Okay, under its own underlying defined machine configuration and all infrastructure. Okay, but EC2 machine, in case of virtual machine or EC2 machine, for running our utility or the software, first of all we need to do all the setups. Like if you are develop any website or web portal or any kind of application, you need to define or install all the dependent softwares or prerequisites on the machine. Okay, and the machine also you have to configure that as per your requirement or the application needs, how much CPU cores required, how much network bandwidth will be needed, how much memory, temporary memory, or the storage, how much permanent storage, what operating system you require. All the required configuration you need to configure, and you need to create the virtual machine, and you also need to require all the necessary software or dependent software dependencies to run your code or script in virtual machine. But in AWS Lambda, it's nothing like that. We have to write our code in our preferred language and then give it to AWS Lambda, and that will keep on running. With AWS Lambda, definitely it provisions the EC2 instances of the virtual machines in the background to run our utility or our program, but we don't have access to those underlying infrastructure, or the we cannot log into the remote machines or the virtual machines what is running behind AWS Lambda. But in case of EC2 instance, we have the access. We can log into the machine. We have the credential. We can set up our own softwares, all the dependencies as we discussed in the previous point, like all the software dependencies we can install. We can monitor the process and everything. So we have full administration access to the EC2 instance. But it's not the case with AWS Lambda. For AWS Lambda, in terms of charges of the pricing model, it is charging you only for the time, only for the seconds or milliseconds our code is running. Our code is using the resources with AWS Lambda. Like if we develop a utility that is sending some hourly communication to our customers, okay, for the business. Okay, so let's say the script or utility is taking 10 seconds to send all the communications to the customers, all the customers, and it is running hourly, so 24 times in a day. So it will be charged you only 240 seconds, for only for the 240 seconds. Okay, because for those particular seconds only our code was running on the infrastructure, and resources were being used. Okay, so that is the benefit of AWS Lambda. But in case of EC2 instance, if we deploy our application or the same application on EC2 instance, even if we are running the code in on hourly or certain frequency, but since the resource is configured, pre-configured, okay, the machine is being utilized. Okay, the charges will be for the entire resources for all the times that whether our code is running at a certain time or not running. Okay, so it will be chargeable. So these are the points. These are the comparisonal points between AWS Lambda and EC2 instance. I hope you like the video. So thank you very much for now. We will connect again. Stay connected in the next video for further AWS Lambda topics and sessions. Thank you very much.